Okay. All right. So we have a very fascinating topic tonight, and it's all about a very famous piece of real estate. Um, Paul wrote it to me by email. This is the story of the Cave of Machpelah. So it's a very famous piece of real estate because a lot of people, a lot of people want to be there, want to go there, have control over it. So this is in the city of Hebron, which is in Israel. It is the place that our forefather Avram wanted to purchase to bury his wife Sarah there. Okay, so Paul, you were exactly right about that. The story is probably good to see in the text. If you'd like to read it along with me, it's at jewishiceland.com/download. I included about 10 verses from the Torah. I don't know if we need to read all of it, but we could give a quick glance at it. Maybe we could highlight some of the verses. And this is really the story of the first piece of land that was bought by a Jew in Israel. So jewishiceland.com/download. We'll read the story. Anybody want to read it?
I'll read it if no one else wants to read it.
Go right ahead, please.
So just from the top, you can hear me clearly?
Excellent.
Great. Now Ephron was sitting in the midst of the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the sons of Heth, and of all those who had come into the gate of his city, saying, No, my lord, listen to me. I have given you the field and the cave that is in it. I have given it to you. Before the eyes of the sons of my people, I have given it to you. Bury your dead. And Abraham prostrated himself before the people of the land. And he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, But if you only would listen, I am giving the money for the field. Take it from me, and I will bury my dead there. And Ephron replied to Abraham, saying to him, My lord, listen to me. A piece of land, 400 shekels of silver. What is it between me and you? Bury your dead. And Abraham listened to Ephron. And Abraham weighed out to Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, accepted by the merchant. And so the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, facing Mamre, was established as Abraham's possession. This included the field and the cave that was in it, and all the trees that were in the field, which were within its entire border around. It was to Abraham as a possession before the eyes of the sons of Heth, in the presence of all who had come within the gate of his city. And afterwards, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, facing Mamre, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And the field and the cave within it were established to Abraham as burial property, purchased from the sons of Heth.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Heather.
Very interesting.
So this is the story. This is the story in the Torah in this week's Torah portion. And basically Avram purchases this place as a burial plot for his wife Sarah. When did this purchase take place? How long ago was this? What year was it in? So it was more than 3,500 years ago. The exact year is 1677 BCE. 1677 BCE. So, right, more than 3,500 years ago. And this is certainly the first piece of land that we know of that was bought by a Jew. So what is this whole negotiation between Ephron, the landowner, and Avram? So first, Avram wants to buy the field. Then Ephron says, no, I want to give it to you for free as a gift. And then Avram has to persist and insist on paying full price. And finally, only in the end, Ephron agrees, he takes the money and he gets the field. So what is this whole negotiation about? Why was he Why was he, pushing back? Why was he trying to give it as a gift, not accepting the money at first? Anybody could think of a reason or could speculate or figure something out based on the text that we just read?
Well, they might have wanted Abraham to feel obligated.
Okay. Obligated
to him for giving to him the land for free.
Right. Owe him a favor,
Mm-hmm.
a big favor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's good. Any other ideas? So the Ramban Nachmanides says something very interesting. A very interesting commentary. And what he says is that it might seem like Ephron was a very nice person trying to give Avram a free property, but in fact, there was something going on over here, because in their culture, owning a plot of land for burial was a certain symbol of permanence. And it showed, at least at that time in that culture, it showed a certain deep connection between the person who owned it and the land. And so that's why if there was somebody passing by and if somebody needed a place to bury their dead, they were happy to give them any plot, a place to bury their dead. But to sell the actual land and that there should be a deed and there should be official ownership over the plot, that was something that, says the Ramban, that they reserved only for their tribe. That was, it was a certain statement. It was a certain, it represented a very strong connection between the owner and the land. And this is something that they wanted to reserve for their own people and for their own tribe. And so in the end, when Ephron actually sold the property to Avram and Avram paid the full price, that was a political statement. And that was a very strong acknowledgement and a connection, showing that Avram now had a very deep connection, a very strong connection, and an eternal connection to this land. So it was a very symbolic thing as well. And it could be this is the reason why Avram insisted on paying for it. I mean, I think there's a lot of benefits for paying for a piece of land. Today it's a hotly contested piece of land. I mean, imagine if Avram didn't pay for it. At least now we have proof. We have proof that Avram paid for the land, paid for the cave. This is not the only place that was purchased at full price. It was also Temple Mount, and as well as the burial place of Joseph, which is in Beis Lechem. So these are places that are recorded, and it's quite clear from the text that they were paid in full. So I think there's some benefits, some obvious benefits to paying for something, because then the ownership cannot be challenged. But in this case, there's also other symbolism here. The fact that Avram was allowed to buy the land. This showed that he had a strong connection, a deep connection, an eternal connection to the land. I mean, you could find this even today in some countries. They have laws like you could only buy a property if you're a citizen of the country, right? I think this is not something unheard of today. I think you do find this in certain places. So this is a similar idea. The fact that that Ephron was willing to sell it, that was a certain acknowledgement for the connection that he had to the land. So what was special about this piece of land? Why did Avram choose specifically this place in Hebron, this field and this cave for a burial place for his wife Sarah? What was special about this place? So the first thing is that it was the burial place of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, believe it or not. So about 2,000 years earlier, less actually, Adam and Eve were both buried in the cave of Machpelah. Now, that is already enough of a reason for this place to be special. You know, imagine Adam and Eve. This is hot real estate. But in fact, the Zohar, which is the most famous book, the first and foremost book of Kabbalah, says that the cave of Machpelah is not only special because of the people who are buried there, but it actually is a gateway to the Garden of Eden. I can't tell you exactly what that means. It might be something spiritual. The gateway to the Garden of Eden means that this place has you know is very connected to the Garden of Eden, and let's say our prayers could go through this gateway. Whatever it means that it's a gateway, it's certainly something very important. It's certainly something very powerful. So this is what the Kabbalah says, that the place of this cave was also the place which was the gateway to the Garden of Eden. Now, who figured this out? So the Kabbalah continues and says that Adam was the first person to recognize that this was a special place. And what the Kabbalah says is that he saw a certain ray of light. Again, we don't know exactly what that looked like, if it was something spiritual or something physical, but there was a certain ray of light that Adam saw, and he recognized that this was a special place, and he decided that he wanted to be buried there. And so he dug a grave for both himself and for his wife Chava, for Eve. And in fact, they were buried there in the end. Years later, Avram also recognized the same thing, recognized how important this place was, and that it was in fact a gateway to the Garden of Eden. And there's an interesting story that the Medrash shares about this. It was soon, just a few days after Avram was circumcised, and he all of a sudden was visited by three people. And this is the story in last week's Torah portion. But what happened was Avram wanted to slaughter a calf to serve his guest. And what happened was the calf started running away. So Avram followed it to find it, to bring it back home so he could serve his guest. Now Avram was a resident of the city of Hebron. That's where he lived. Where did the calf go? The calf ended up at this cave of Machpelah. And what the Medrash says is that Avram also saw a certain light, and he recognized the burial place of Adam and Eve. He knew that it was their burial place. There were candles lit there. There was a special fragrance there, says the Medrash. And Avram saw this light, and he understood that it was a very special place, and he recognized that it was the place where Adam and Eve were buried. And so it was at that moment that Avram decided that he also wanted to be buried there. And in fact, in the end, he was. So first, his wife passed away. Sarah passed away. She was buried there first, and that's when he bought the land. But in the end, Avram was buried there as well. About 200 years later, 200 years after Avram purchases the land, we find in the Torah the first recorded Jew to visit the gravesite and to pray. So what was the story? There were 12 spies that were appointed by Moshe to visit the land of Israel. The Jewish people were still in the desert, and they were about to go into the land of Israel. And what the Jewish people decided was, and Moshe agreed to this, was that one representative from each tribe should be chosen, and together they would go out. They would go to Israel to make a strategy and to spy and to see what could be done to conquer the land. So of course they knew that God was on their side, and they knew that they would win the war, but they wanted to, because the land was promised to them, but they nevertheless they wanted to, they were supposed to do it, and they wanted to do it in a natural way. So they needed to prepare a strategy, and in order to do that, they felt that they needed to send the spies. Now, one of the spies was a man named Kalev. He was the head of his tribe, and the whole group of spies turned out to commit a very bad sin. And what they did was they came up with this plot, and they, after visiting land of Israel and spying and checking it out, they came back with a bad report, and they scared the Jewish people, and they told them that, you know, it's not going to be possible. Our army is not strong enough. We're not going to be able to do it. It's not going to work. They're going to kill us. And they really scared the Jewish people and made them too afraid. So they started crying. They said, "We don't want to go back to Israel." Now, these 12 spies, this was a plot that they came up with together. Only two of them did not take part. One of them was Kalev. And Kalev saw that there was going to be this plot. And so as soon as they got into Israel, the first thing he did was take a detour, and he went to the city of Hebron. Why did he go there? This is the place where Adam and Eve are buried, and our forefathers and mothers, right? So this is already 200 years after Avram bought the land. So at this time, there were already a whole bunch of people buried there. It was Adam and Eve, Avram and his wife, Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, as well as Yaakov and his wife, Leah. So this was a very special place. And so Kalev was the first one who we know of who made the trip, made the journey all the way to the city of Hebron. Hi. We don't see you, but we hear you. So you could unblock your video so we could see you, and hopefully you could hear us. So Kalev was the first one that we know of who made the trip to Hebron, and he went there to pray. And the prayer was that he shouldn't be pressured into participating in this plot, that's what he prayed for. And in the end, it was only Kalev and another one of the leaders of another tribe. His name was Yehoshua. The two of them together, they pushed back, and when they came back to the Jewish people, they said, this is not true. We're going to be successful. God is going to be on our side. We're able to do it. So it was the 10 against the 2, and perhaps the reason why Kalev was successful in not participating and keeping his faith strong and his belief strong, perhaps it was thanks to this prayer where he went to the cave of Machpelah, to pray for the success of his mission.
Avi, do you mind if I ask a very quick question, very briefly?
Please, go right ahead.
So it's a really fascinating story. There's something a bit unclear in my mind as someone who knows lots about the, modern day machinations in that region and nothing about this era. The two who didn't, who were not passing the message that it's too dangerous to go back, and the others who were saying it's too dangerous to go back. Was it just a difference of assessment on the situation in sort of like the occupied, like Israel, that the Jews want to go back to, or where they go back on purpose as a kind of subterfuge or trick. They were trying to trick the Jewish people, the ones who came back and said, no, 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 it's too dangerous. That's not, they just had a different assessment of the danger of the situation. They were telling a lie.
So I'll answer your question on two
Just
levels. I'll answer your question on two levels. One is on a practical level. I think we could assume that they were giving their honest assessment. So 10 people were giving their honest assessment. They saw very powerful kings, very powerful armies, and fortified cities. They understood that that it wouldn't be possible for them to conquer the land. Now, if you pay attention to the text of that part of the Torah, you'll notice that Moshe, when he appointed the spies, he didn't send them to try to figure out if they could be successful. He sent them to figure out how they could be successful. And the words of the Torah are of course very exact. And Kalev and his buddy Yehoshua, they understood that their job wasn't to figure out if they could win, because of course Moshe knew and they knew that they could win, because it was not a regular war. God was going to give them the land. They just had to do their part. So they understood that it was not up to them to decide if it was possible. It was their mission to just follow the instructions and figure out what would be the best strategy, how best to do it. So in fact, the 10 spies who sinned, they took the liberty to give an assessment on if it would be possible. This is on a practical level. On a deeper level, I would say that the 10 spies had positive and good intentions. Now you have to understand that these 10 spies were leaders of the Jewish people, right? So there were 12 tribes, and the leaders of the tribes, they were the ones chosen. Now you have to remember that this was the generation of people who experienced the Exodus from Egypt. So they experienced miracles firsthand, right? They saw the plagues. They knew that while one person couldn't escape Egypt, it was the superpower of the world. One slave couldn't escape the borders, couldn't escape Egypt. And here, an entire nation of millions of people in the middle of the day were able to leave. So it was miracles upon miracles, and then the splitting of the sea. So even if you were not a leader of the Jewish people, I think anyone would have to be perhaps foolish not to believe that God could do one more miracle and help them enter into the land. So how is it possible that these Jewish leaders of all people came back and said, we cannot do this. We're not going to manage, and it's not going to be successful. How could it be that specifically the leaders of the Jewish people came back with a bad report? And the answer is this. Again, this is on a deeper level. On a practical level, we could say that maybe that was this was their practical assessment. But on a deeper level, we have to answer the question: how could it be that they didn't believe in God's power? They witnessed it firsthand. And the answer is that the 10 spies, this is according to the Kabbalah, the 10 spies had good intentions. And what they believed was they had a fundamental disagreement with the other 2 spies. And what they believed was that Judaism is supposed to be a spiritual experience. It's supposed to be, it's not Judaism and serving God is not built for the land of Israel, where they're going to have to farm the land and open up businesses and provide for their families. They believed that Judaism was a spiritual a spiritual service, and a holy experience, a spiritual experience, which belonged in the desert. The desert was a place where they didn't have to worry about any of their own needs. They didn't have to work the land. They didn't have to make money. Everything was taken care of for them. And these 10 spies, they believed that that was the way, that is supposed to be the Jewish experience. It's supposed to be a spiritual experience, a holy experience, separated from society, separated from regular city life, if you will. And that's what they were saying. They said, we're not going to be successful. We're not going to be successful. We're not going to be able to continue being Jewish in a regular land, in a normal society. That's what they said. So they had good intentions. They were saying, of course, God could conquer the land for us. But what's going to happen? Judaism is going to fall apart. We're not going to be able to continue serving God. And of course, the truth was what Kalev and Yehoshua said, that we will be successful. We could go into the land, because that is the purpose. The purpose is not to be in your own spiritual bubble. The purpose is to bring the holiness of Judaism, and to bring the spirituality of Judaism and the power of Judaism into regular life and into normal society. So that is perhaps a deeper explanation and a more mystical or Kabbalistic explanation as to why they came back with a bad report. So we have these two reasons. One, practical, perhaps this was their assessment from a strategic point of view, and perhaps this was also their spiritual opinion that Judaism was supposed to be a spiritual experience. Hopefully that provides some insight.
Thank you so much for clarifying. Yeah, now it makes lots of sense on many levels. Thank you.
Definitely. So back to the story. Where did Kalev get this? Well, thank you for bringing this up, because I think now we could appreciate more what Kalev was up against, right? So on a practical level, he was up against what they felt was a strategic impossibility, and he had to stand strong and stand firm in his position, and not give in to the peer pressure and to whatever pressure that there might have been. And on a spiritual level, he had to also hold his ground and understand and continue to believe that Judaism is in fact supposed to be in Israel. And perhaps was very difficult for people to understand that, because they were not used to such a thing. They received the Torah in the desert. They officially became the Jewish people in the desert. So they were not accustomed to this Jewish life in a normal society. So this is what Kalev had to stand up against. This is what he had to stand firm about. And so this exactly is why he made a stop and took a detour to the city of Hebron, to the cave of Machpelah, where Adam and Eve are buried, our forefathers and mothers are buried, to pray. And now we also understand that this is the place which is the gateway to the Garden of Eden. What exactly does that mean? We don't know, but perhaps this is the place where prayers could go more directly to our forefathers and mothers, to our very righteous leaders, and so that they could pray on our behalf as well, and they could plead to God on our behalf as well. So Kalev was the first one who recognized the power of prayer, especially at such a holy place. Kalev was not the last one. Over the years, of course, there were tremendous numbers of Jewish people who would stop by and visit the city of Hebron and the cave of Machpelah to pray there themselves. And until this very day, it's considered to be a very special place to be and to pray and to experience the place. So there were, Kalev was the first, but there were countless others who continued and did the same thing.
Do you know which tribe Joshua and Caleb were from?
I could look it up. It's clear in the verses. I just don't remember offhand. I'll try to remember to look it up right when we're done, and I'll let you know.
I wonder because there are also 10 brothers who represent 10 tribes that sent Joseph to sold him
Yeah,
into
so
slavery.
these are the names of the tribes. So those 12 sons are the names of the 12 tribes. So it's their descendants that were these tribes, and then these 12 spies, they were the leaders of these tribes. But I can get you the exact tribe that each of these people belong to. It's in the middle of the book of Bamidbar, if I'm not mistaken, the book of Numbers.
I would just wonder if Joshua and Caleb were from tribe, from the line of Joseph and Benjamin, the two that didn't participate in this.
Right.
In sending.
We'll look that up. That's an interesting point. Okay, I would like to show you some photos of this cave that we're talking so much about, and then I'll give you some more history about it as well. So I'm going to try sharing my screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. I thought I was the host. How do I do this? Who came on first? I think Aaron, you came on first. Maybe you could make me the host. Let me see. Share screen. Okay, I'm gonna quickly go to the Zoom website, see if I could unlock that feature. I'll give it about 30 seconds. And if I'm not successful, then we'll continue on. Let's go to.
Avi, I just have an idea.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. It is just an idea, but if you can't share your screen, you could always find it online and send us a web link. We can all look at the same thing online.
Definitely.
Sorry, I'm sure maybe you thought of that.
I just want to see if I can get it right now. I'm in the settings of the meeting. I thought I would leave that on, but okay. Okay. Let me see. Screen sharing all participants. Save. Okay, so I just fixed the settings. Hopefully it's going to work even though we're in the middle of the meeting. Oh, no, it's not working. I guess this meeting is not aware that we changed the settings. Okay.
I don't know if I am the host. I can see where it's. I can claim host, but where should I be able to? If I do
the bottom center of the screen, it says share screen.
Ah, here it is. Yeah, host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay. So, okay. So I'll send the pictures. Hello, Ivan. Good to see you. I'm going to send the pictures afterwards because I think it's very cool to see. I found some old pictures as well. Okay, but in the meantime, you know what? Let me see if I could. I'll Google it quickly on my phone and I'll put it in front of the screen. Let's see. Cave of Machpelah. Images. Okay, sorry for the delay. I should have checked this out earlier. Okay, so here, it's not very good. Oh, you could see something. So this is the building. This is the building. It's not a very great photo, but it is a photo. Here's another one. And okay, I'll send better photos later, and you can see more of what I'm going to talk about in those photos. So here we have some of the history of the Cave of Machpelah. The structure of the building is the structure is what. Sorry about that. How do I turn this off? Okay, I'm usually more techie than this. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the building and the structure that we see today, and what's going on there, and how it was built, some of the history there. So the building that stands there today, the picture that I just showed you, was built in the 1st century BCE. Was built by Herod the king. The building is above the cave, is above the entrance of the cave. So today you can't see the cave and you can't go into the cave, but you could go into the structure, this huge building, and the building is on top of the entrance of the cave. It was sometime around the year 1490 that the cave was closed. Okay, so the cave used to have an entrance, and it was open. Theoretically, somebody could go in, but sometime around that time, it was closed off. Nobody was allowed to go there. It was around the same time, sometime after that, that the Muslim rulers of the time forbade the Jewish people from visiting the Cave of Machpelah, visiting the grave sites. And what they let them do, they let them pray outside of the building. Outside of the building, there's this staircase that you could still see there today, a staircase that's to the side, not at the entrance of the building, but kind of in the corner. There's the staircase, and I think at the top of the staircase it's just a wall. It was sealed off, and the Jewish people were allowed to go there to pray, and they were allowed to stand as high as the 5th step of that staircase. That was the limit where they could go and pray. And sometime later, somehow that changed to the 7th step. But it was at that time that the Jewish people were restricted from going there to pray. So you can imagine such an important place for Jewish people, and such an important place for Jewish prayer, but they were banned from visiting the actual place. They were only allowed to be at the outside. But there was actually there was always a community. There was always a Jewish community in the city of Hebron. So over the last 2,000 years and even longer, there was always a Jewish presence in the city of Hebron. There was a synagogue, there was a community, and there were always Jewish people there. It's a very special city. There are actually 4 cities in Israel which are considered to be holy. So of course the whole Israel is the Holy Land, but there are 4 cities that have an extra holiness. They go by like Ir HaKodesh. It's a holy city. So the holy city of Hebron is one of those 4. So this tells you the importance of the city. The community, as old as it was destroyed in 1929, when there was a terrible massacre of the Jewish community of Hebron. And when the massacre was done, the British government that was in control of Israel, they forced all of the survivors to leave the city. So this was the community in a way came to an end. It was only in 1967, after the Six-Day War, that the Israelis took back control over the city of Hebron, and the restriction of praying on the fifth step and the seventh step of not going in, of course, this was lifted. The synagogue was reestablished at the cave, as part of the building, part of the structure, and until today, people go there. Mushki and I visited Israel a few years ago, and one of the places we visited was the Cave of Machpelah, very special place to visit. So you can still go there today, and it's also a place where Muslims go to pray because they are descendants of Avram as well. So it's a very important place for a lot of people. Now, no one that we know has gone down into the actual cave. Okay, so legend has it that nobody who went in there came out alive. Okay, sounds a little spooky, right? But the legend was that if you went into the actual cave, people didn't come out alive. There was one person who did go down there and survived, and I'll share with you the story. The story was about 300 years ago. There was a rabbi. His name was Rabbi Avram Azulai. He was the one who went down. How did it come to be? What was the story? So there was the Turkish Sultan who was in control of the region at the time, and somehow by mistake he dropped his very precious sword into the opening of the cave. So they lowered some soldiers to go down there and retrieve it, but they didn't come out. So it was they died in the cave. So the Sultan didn't know what to do. So what he decided was he ordered the Jewish community to provide a volunteer who would go down into the cave and retrieve the sword. And he said that if you don't supply a volunteer, I'm going to kill all of you, the whole community. And so the Jewish community didn't know what to do. Who's going to go down into the cave? And so Rabbi Avram Azulai, he volunteered to go down himself into the cave and retrieve the sword. And sure enough, he went in there, got the sword, and came out successfully, alive, unharmed. And of course, the Jewish people of Hebron celebrated. Over the next 7 days, this Rabbi Azulai, who was actually a very great Kabbalist, he spent 7 days teaching his students some of the deepest secrets and some of the deepest parts of the Torah, of the Kabbalah. And exactly 1 week after he went down into the cave, he passed away, and he was buried in the cemetery of the Jewish community of Hebron. So that's the story of the only person who we know who went down there and made it out alive. So that's pretty much the story of the cave of Machpelah, and this is the place where Sarah is buried. She was the first one of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, but she was not the last. Of course, all of them, I should say most of them, were buried there because Rachel was not buried there. Because Sarah was the first one of our mothers to be buried there, I'll share one more thing before we finish. I'll share one more thing about Sarah, and that is the name of the Torah portion. The name of the Torah portion is the life of Sarah. Now, the entire Torah portion talks about everything that happened after she passed away. But the name is the life of Sarah. Now, in the Torah, everything is very exact. So if the title, even the title has to be accurate. The title is supposed to express what the whole thing is about. So why is it called the life of Sarah if everything that happened in this story and in this Torah portion is related to Sarah's death and everything that happened afterwards? So this reminds me of something called death insurance. Somebody came up with a wonderful idea called death insurance. And it was insurance in case you would die. And believe it or not, it was a tremendous failure because nobody wanted to buy death insurance. It's not something that people were interested in. Sometime later, somebody, I think someone else, came up with the idea of changing the name to life insurance. Because life, it's a much happier, much more optimistic name, and it's something that people would be interested in. And of course, we know today that it is $1 billion industry, and life insurance is something that everyone is selling, and people are buying all the time. So the insurance was exactly the same. Only the name changed. It changed from death insurance to life insurance to make it more appealing. Now, is the Torah doing the same thing? I mean, the story is of the death and everything that happened after Sarah passed away. And here the name is life. So is it the same kind of gimmick that is just trying to make it sound more friendly and more happy? Or is there something deeper, and is there a message that the Torah is sharing? And the answer is that there is, in fact, a very powerful message here. That is that for righteous people, somebody like our mother Sarah, for righteous people whose life were productive in every way possible, and every day was a positive day, every day was a righteous day, and every day something was achieved, and every single day something was accomplished, such a person is considered to be alive even after they pass away. Because of their unbelievable achievements and accomplishments, their legacy lives on. And sometimes, says the Torah, or at least the Torah is hinting to this, that sometimes a person is more alive after they pass away than during their lifetime. What does that mean? Obviously, they're not more alive physically, because physically they died, but on a deeper level, on a more spiritual level, in a way they're more alive, because now you could see how productive their life was. Now you could see how special they were, how their lives were filled with accomplishments and just goodness and positivity. You know that by when you see the legacy that somebody leaves, and when you see the impact that somebody makes even after they pass away, that's how you know that they lived, the best life. That's how you know that they led an accomplished life. And so this is why the Torah calls the name of this Torah portion, the Torah calls it the life of Sarah, because Sarah's legacy continued. She had such an accomplished life, such a productive life, and the impact was felt for a very long time afterwards. And this was clear. This made it clear, and this was this was an expression of how impactful Sarah's life was, and how her legacy was as strong as ever, and how her impact was as strong as ever. And so this is why it calls it the life of Sarah, because in this way, Sarah's life continued. It continued through her legacy, through her children who were continuing in her ways and following her guidance, following her example, and continuing to make a tremendous impact in the world.